So it is January 17th, 2022. And um, from time to time, what comes up in law consciousness is those who they're trying to steer. See, here, there are people who would try to steer someone who has had an experience like law or someone else who may have, endured a similar experience so that they would become upset enough to have to try to prove it.
I guess about it. It was a
And
prank.
they would have to feel the need to try to prove themselves in some way or another, verbally speaking. Yeah, then they know that person trying to prove that already understands of the dangers that could arise from them coming open about an issue from, let's say, over 2 decades ago. It's not going to have as much of an impact as if it was, let's say, several months after the initial incident. If they were to open up about what they had lived through, and because then you wouldn't be causing necessarily a guilt trip or really hard feelings on someone who would have just as much they would only know as far as, let's say, for instance, that I was recovered at that point a few to several months inward, not knowing if I would ever make a full recovery, whereas to the point where I have been for the past 18 years. So now I can be open about it because obviously the damage is not as visible as it was, let's say, 20 years ago. You see what I'm saying? So, anyways, what they like to do, what they're doing that is very dangerous, is that type of behavior of trying to get someone to verbally try to, make a statement about what they had experienced in order to try to defend themselves of, let's say, their actions, of their self-defense or whatever it may be, ahead of time if they need to give those forewarnings. And then, like, so if they were to do this to someone who was maybe a few months to several months into their recovery, they know they should know this by now. That's where these other people would fit into the category. If how dangerous their behavior is by trying to cause, let's say, someone to try to prove to them, verbally speaking, what they had lived through. You see what I'm saying? Too soon. And so what other people may not register or pick up or see is that it's actually completely on the exterior's behavior that is more risk taking than the person making their statement 20 years later of how they recovered from something, or even those who are in the recovery 3 months up to 7 months into their recovery, trying to explain what they had lived through beforehand because of the, let's say, those on the exterior trying to persuade them to do their explaining as far as a public post, for instance. So no matter what, it's the cause of that person making the statements of what they had lived through as their testimonial of, let's say, their current state of recovery, maybe a few months to several months inward, and the impact that may have on other people who know that person at that time, based off the unknown of if they would ever get as far as as far well as I had for the past 18 years, where it may appear irreversible in a very more debilitating way than what I continue to live with. Whereas I just can't travel a distance on my own. That's not a big deal for me. And so it wouldn't have as much of an impact on them. You see what I'm saying? Whereas, like, if they felt like if there was any obligation,
Lots of fresh
you know what I'm saying?
vegetables.
If they felt that way, I'm saying not to worry. Whereas the issue is the risk that the exterior is taking by, trying to they're trying to ignite a fuse that they should be able to predict how dangerous that behavior is. You see, they don't, and they pretend to that as if it's like as if they never had dealt with that type of chain reaction, or like they may still not know completely whether or not if they are there is still unknown. But those who are, let's say, professional, let's say they work in the professional field, they should know better. If they're going to be working in that field, they should be able to pick up on if whether or not someone who's instigating or inciting or trying to light the fuse with, let's say, someone only a few months into several months of their recovery, to the point where they're trying to hide the fact of possibly what they're going through so that it wouldn't have an impact on other people that know them, maybe. And then the ones who are lighting that fuse or fueling that fire, for them to have to try to verbally go as far as make a public statement about it only a few months into several months inward to their recovery, and other people only knowing as far as that person has recovered, not knowing whether or not if they will get beyond something way more severely debilitating than where I have been for the past 18 years in comparison to where I was 20 years ago. That unknown could be dangerous to other people who may be clinically depressed who know that person. You see what I'm saying? So that's like, because that, but I'm guaranteeing it. Okay,